Hey everybody, welcome back. Here we are. It's Monday. I'm actually officially on jury duty, which is actually apparently done from home now through Zoom. So, but that won't interrupt our class. I don't know, as far as I know. So it's like 1 week or one trial. So I don't know. I have to actually like pay attention to my email for a week and stay home, apparently, at least for the time being. So, um, but anyway, doesn't mean I can't record tapes. So here we are. All right, so now we move into the second week of our class, and got a lot of the papers back and everything. I mean, one thing about this class as compared to my fall and summer classes, we have to move a lot faster. So, fortunately, I don't get enough time, I feel like, to actually really kind of like teach you this stuff in the beginning. So it's really like a trial and error, I guess, with a lot of the first papers that come in. I got just about all of them in. I appreciate that. But you really got to turn them in on time. Otherwise, like as I said before, within 24 hours, it's one grade lower at least, and then if it's more than 24 hours, it's an F because deadlines do matter in journalism, especially in today's journalism where everything is 24/7. So you want to be right, but you don't want to be beat by the competition. Um, so let's share the screen and like show you like some of the things I did. And I even like introduced some things that I haven't discussed yet. So let's see what we got here. Oops, the one that's yesterday's Wordle. Okay, so this is from Amanda. I mean, what I saw a lot of like stories that had like good like I got maybe had a decent top. They had like a decent focus, but maybe they kind of like went off into some other direction away from where it should be focused. And what I saw a lot was that you got to keep these stories new. Okay. Um, this one here says Madeline Martino went through the auditioning process of the Eagles Philadelphia cheerleading team just to be cut at the last audition. She's now it suddenly goes into background. News is the plural of new, so you want to keep everything basically new. Okay, so what is actually the impact of that? What happened as a result of that? What apparently what I found out later was that she was actually still has aspirations of being a cheerleader. And maybe this is just the start of things, so she plans to try again. So what we need after this, I mean, that is significant, and I was asking for that. What was unique about her, but what we need to know is what's happening now. We need to know, like, okay, so what's she taking from that? What's happening as a result of that? What sort of impact has it had on her life? If something happened 5 years ago, which it wasn't apparently, you know, um, what is it? How does it matter now? Why is it still something that maybe she would bring up as something important? That inspired her to continue doing something more. Okay. Um, she previously auditioned for the Rutgers dance team. And I mean, a lot of that is good information to have, but it's actually background information. Okay. So that goes actually lower in the story. The background information is actually less important. I'll talk about the inverted pyramid and what that means today. Okay. Basically having the most important stuff at the top. I saw a bunch of these, and I didn't talk about this a lot. And that is basically like you want to make sure this is Associated Press style. Actually, you want to make sure that you have the full name identified first. Okay. Um, and then, you know, unless, I mean, we don't use anonymous sources in this classes. It's really not necessary. I mean, we're not really talking about controversial things. Well, some of you dealt with some personal things, which actually was really interesting and important. And I mean, if we do have to get to a point where maybe we just use one name, that's fine. We're not publishing these things anywhere, these stories anywhere. So anyway, so just don't, just let them know that it's not going to really, not going to end up in any like website or anything like that. Okay. But the second reference and future reference is actually last name. That's viewed as neutral. Also, the last name is less common than the first name, so it's we're going with unique, um, new. So the last name is usually more unique than the first name. Okay, the first name is much more common. It's easier to identify the person throughout the story and know who that person you're talking about is. Um, all right. Another thing I talked about a lot was actually like long paragraphs. This is way too long. It looks like a textbook. Okay. So what I did was, like, she had a previous graph actually that was actually really long too. So what I did was actually I divided them. Periods are your friends, okay? And they also, again, they give like the story kind of like dramatic pauses. They give the reader a time, and they also give the reader a chance to maybe like breathe and stop and then to continue. That's why this is the most accessible literary form, because it's the easiest to read, and you want to make sure that it stays that way, okay? So yeah, so I mean, you would see a lot of this stuff, like this stuff needs to be higher. There was a lot of that stuff. Okay, so all right. And also just like use the word said. I saw a lot of like he said with a jolly laugh, or he stated with a jolly laugh. I mean, we don't have to say that. We just have to say said. Just be, that's the neutral. We're going for it to be as objective as possible here. Okay. Um Here we have like Miriam. Did a really good job writing this. I saw a lot of good writing, but Mona Farouk, and there's no offense to Mona or anything like that, but she's about to finish her time as a middle schooler. That's not unique. That's very common. Lots of people finish eighth grade. So, you know, in this particular case, I was actually really kind of just fishing for what was actually like really what was unique about Mona. And you can see here, right here again, it's the last name on second reference. And actually, I found out that she plays like all these instruments, which you may also say is not so unique, but I can't play any instruments. I can play a little piano, that's about it. But the fact that she does all this, I wanted to know more, like I mean not everybody who goes into the marching band actually like, can play all these instruments. Um so, that maybe like she played in a band, has she played like what other sort of interests have she have in music? That was actually something I really kind of wanted to know more about. Okay. Um, all right. So yeah, I mean, I'm not looking for like New York Times unique and rare, but I am looking for something that basically like can show like what separates this person from everybody else on the planet. So anyway, so yeah, so that's what I just want to give a general idea of what I'm looking for here. Okay, in writing, I mean, you have until June 9th to actually rewrite that. And again, if you got an R, you have to rewrite it. And then there were about half the class got about R's, which I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm not surprised. That's unfortunate because actually, again, the summer and I'm sorry, the spring and the fall, I give people an opportunity right before this, but this is actually your first chance. But that's what we have to deal with, and that's the way it goes. So, and I taught this class last year, and everything turned out just fine. So don't worry about that. Again, if you have any kind of questions, I can schedule office hours or whatever. That's fine. You through Zoom. So let me know about that. Okay. Um, and if you didn't get an R, you should rewrite it. I mean, there were a couple of B's, there were a bunch of C's. You should rewrite that. And I've seen a lot of those stories, even ours, like it turn into A's. So don't forget that your last stories count more than your first stories, but you should actually really try to work hard at actually like, you know, making sure that your first stories are good too. Okay. Also another thing, I did a lot of this, and I'm going to be talking about this today actually. Um, and let me actually go back to the shared screen. Yes, that was from last week. I did a lot about this because I just want to kind of get people in the mode of like knowing when and how to do this. Okay, and that is attribution. Okay, he said, she said, they said. Okay, the name, the person then said. Okay, so this is actually the journalism way of footnoting. Okay, and so what you do is, and you'll see it in your stories. You'll see that actually I mark places where like, and I haven't taught it yet, but I mark places where like you would need attribution. This is the way of actually, this is verification. This is actually a way of, again, footnoting. I'm letting people know that this came from someplace. This, I mean, the really again, one of the main things is to get to the most obtainable versions of the truth. And to do that, you have to establish some sort of credibility. And having credibility to your audience is basically letting them know that this actually came from someplace, okay, that you just didn't make it up. So that's why like I would put even like things that weren't in direct quotes. You should have you should have at least probably in one time in each paragraph, he said, or she said, or they said, or the name of the person and said. Okay, so you'll see that a lot. Okay, just keep that in mind. Okay, we're going to talk about that today because that's actually in our readings, chapters 7, 9, and 10. As you can see, I'm putting together the new lecture note. All right. Yeah, a few things actually, new assignments. Okay, so actually, first of all, don't forget that today, Monday, when this is going to be posted, this video, the worksheets are due, writing leads. Again, very important to know that actually you're writing not headlines, you're writing leads, okay? So that means you're writing basically the first sentence of a story. All right, so like if you see this one right here, it says, again, I think I showed this last week, 150 people. Well, actually, that's the second one. But anyway, so what numbers actually? Let's go to the second one. So there were 2,500 people here at this abortion protest. 150 people were arrested. Okay, so you have to like kind of like pick and choose here, like, and leave something out. You can't, you don't include everything. You say like, okay, so what is like the newest, biggest thing, okay, that happened out of this? Okay, there's been lots of protests that have happened, right? But does everybody get arrested? Do 2 people get arrested? Do 150 people get arrested? What's the newest, biggest thing that came out of that? That should be your lead. And maybe don't include everything that's in that chunk of information that's right there. That's supposed to be like what maybe this is supposed to resemble what the reporter would maybe like get on their recorder, or where they would get what they would get on their what they would write in their notes is this stuff right here. Okay. And then they have to take that information, they have to turn it into a first paragraph lead. Okay. Same thing here. We have a robbery. What's like the most unique, interesting thing, the newest, biggest thing about that? Okay. Numbers matter. So you see like statistics, you say like, geez, is that a lot bigger than last time? If there's an attempted murder, or like, okay, well, be honest with you, there's lots of attempted murders, but how often do they happen? And for what reason? That's the big one. You look at like the motive usually on those types of things. Or what separates this particular attempted murder from every other one? Okay. All right. So this, and then what I should also let you know is also posted is actually now there's also a rewrite on this too. You got an opportunity to rewrite this too. How about that? So, and also you get an opportunity. I also allow people, give them the opportunity, especially with the short amount of time we have, is to actually, if you, and I had a couple of students do this already, like basically, like if you want to show me like a rough draft or something ahead of time, I'll give you some guidance. So please do that too. That's actually all part of actually like class participation, to be honest with you, and being involved and active and that sort of thing. So I like that when people do that. So as you can see, I haven't actually posted these yet because it's before Monday, but there is going to be a rewrite entry for the worksheets too, as well. So that'll be due on June 12th, a week from Monday today when this is posted. And then of course this Friday is when we have the rewrite on the profile. That's June 9th. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Where are we here? Okay. So then I have this posted. This is going to be your next assignment. We're almost at the halfway point of the semester after 1 week. How about that? Because this is like the third assignment. But actually, what this one is actually, this is more participatory. And again, this is another way I gauge class participation. I want to know, like, this is an extra credit opportunity. So what I want people to do is actually to submit an idea and Rutgers related idea. Okay. Narrow it down a little bit. And what I'm going to look for is like the best and even easiest and most accessible idea for you to do for your next assignment. Okay. And usually I look for like, I'm not looking for major investigations here. Okay. Or anything like that, because that's too much to do in like a week or less. Okay. What I want you to do is look for something that actually really matters to people. And usually it's like something, maybe it's something that people can react to or something like that. Something that you can maybe like get other students, maybe other family members, other people, and what I'll do is also I'll publish a discussion point that will actually like allow you guys to actually comment and be your own. I mean, I don't want you to quote yourselves, but you can quote other people in the class. And what I want you to do is actually, I want you to contribute and give your opinions to whatever topic we choose. Okay. So being a journalist means being a self-starter. It means being independent and coming up with your own ideas. Please come up with 5 story ideas that are Rutgers related and submit to the assignment entry by Thursday. Okay. I'll choose the best idea, which I'll let you know in the Friday lecture. And that person will get extra credit. Okay, it's a grade higher on the next assignment. How about that? And the best idea will be your next graded assignment. And here's things you should know. Keep it simple, no major investigations. I'm going to uncover the Broward Commons. Why does that food make me poop? Keep it simple, keep it related to something that students have to deal with on a regular basis, perhaps. Okay. I know it's summer, but it's something again we can handle by putting up a discussion point and people can react to it. Stories about people, so theme or ideas are that require reactions, very preferably from students, because professors, etc., are hard to contact, people like that, bus drivers, things like that. Okay. All right. So that'll be posted as well. Okay. So that'll be due Thursday. So you have a bunch of things that are due, actually. You have Thursday, which I'll outline in my message here. Thursday you have the ideas for the next assignment. Friday you have the rewrite of the that's the 9th. You'll have the rewrite of the profile assignment, and on Monday, the 12th, you'll have the rewrite of the worksheets assignment. Very good. So, all right, and then further deadlines I'll let you know about later. Okay. Also try to keep your leads simple. I saw a lot of adjectives, like people like using words like his remarkable journey, or it's so cliche. Okay, just say his journey. Okay, how do we know? That's actually really up for the reader to judge whether it's remarkable or not. So you have to be really objective, because that's the way of actually building trust and credibility of the reader. If you show any kind of shade or kind of opinion, and the reader believes you're going to have some sort of angle, and they're not necessarily going to believe that maybe you're going to be professing the truth to them. Okay. You have to be as objective as possible. I talked about EP style, full names on first reference, last name on second. Okay. No PDFs, please. Okay. Even though I warned you last week, I said, no, I can't convert a PDF so easily. Okay. I gotta it's kind of a pain in the butt, and I can't grade a PDF. So please, Microsoft Word. Okay. And like I said, you can show me the work ahead of time. Feel free to do that. That's totally fine with me. Okay. And again, don't forget the worksheets. Also, that's another thing that's due. The worksheets, of course, are due today. So that's due. So today, the 5th, the worksheets are due. Thursday, the 8th, the ideas for the next assignment are due. The 9th, the rewrite of the profile is due. And again, everybody can do that. And then Monday, the rewrite of the worksheets are due. Okay. All right. And don't forget extra credit for the ideas assignment. Okay. And of course, we have also readings that are due. And the next readings we're going to do this week will be chapters 7, 9, and 10, which will deal with some of the next things that we have to deal with. If we look at the modules, okay, we get into news writing structure. Okay. So last week I essentially gave you what was the exoskeleton of what a news outline is. Okay. Now I'm going to give you kind of more specifics about what's expected. So what you should really have is some sort of a lead, as we've talked about, and usually almost always one paragraph, really. I mean, there's other leads that go longer. We'll talk about that in this class. We'll get into that, but it's basically answers the question, why should I care? And then it tries to answer as many of these questions as possible. Who, what, where, why, when, how. That's not really always possible, but okay. And then what happens is you have what is called a transition. Okay. And that essentially breaks down the lead. Okay. From point to point. So you want to if you pick an idea, if actually you can give me 1 second here. Okay, so anyway, I've been dealing with my dog who's being a little fresh right now, but that's fine. So anyway, talking about how a story is structured. Stories have basically what they call, again, they have like a lead, and anyway they have transitions essentially that guide the reader through the story. Okay, and they're basically in every story. Okay, you'll see them in crime stories. Okay, two people were hurt in a car crash on Friday. Okay. So what you do is, police said, you have retribution, right? And you go to the next paragraph. Okay, so then what you do is you have what you call a series of transitions. Basically, that's where the story turns to a new point, transitions to a new point. You make a series of points and you answer those questions: who, what, where, why, when. Okay, and the transitions help guide you through that. So you want to find out, like, again, and what this essentially is like, it's called the inverted pyramid. Okay, and I'll show you that in a bit because it's in the book. But you want to like go to the most important stuff and then go to the least important stuff to the bottom, much like a triangle. Okay, the fat part of the top of the triangle is the most important stuff. The small part is actually considered the least important stuff. It doesn't always work out that way, I got to be honest with you, because sometimes everything is just as important as everything else. Okay, but that's basically the overall general journalism philosophy toward actually writing. It's like almost like an upside down story, like I said before. Okay, so you want to like get into transition. Maybe like one of the first questions you want to answer is like, who was hurt? Okay, and you state that as a transition. Okay. Um, okay. And then you have essentially, maybe you go into like maybe like how traffic was affected. Okay. Um, okay, maybe that's one of the things you look at. Maybe before that, actually, like you say how it happened, actually. Okay. How it happens. So you go step by step as you move through the story, okay? Bringing out point by point by point. Okay. Um, now when you go to like a more in-depth story, like a profile, okay, like we just did, or maybe you can get a little bit deeper, okay? You can actually like maybe um they always say like in a news story you should actually like try to like have the reader be there with you as you're going through the story. Okay, that's what you have the ability to use what you call as an anecdote. Okay. I mean, I don't know if it's the most exciting, or has written a book about mental health. Okay, so maybe you could write about, which actually is true. Okay, but anyway, the first transition could be say like, what is the name of the book? Okay. Um, and then maybe you want to get into why the name of the book is. So then what you do is you have essentially an anecdote that comes in here. And that basically is something, it's not necessarily a quote, but it's something that basically like maybe tells a little personal story within a story. Um, that gets even a little bit deeper. Davis said he wrote the book, he picked the name because it symbolizes what he went through as a child and beyond. Okay, so it gets a little more personal, a little bit deeper, a little story within a story. Maybe you can even see like he recalled the time he was with his mother, that sort of thing. And my mother had severe mental illness, so we talked maybe like bringing out this personal anecdote that talks about that. And then what usually follows is some sort of maybe like quote. It was a hard time. And then the quote is usually not something that's like very long. And you'll see that some of your papers too. It was a hard time to be a kid. It's usually something quippy, something emotional, something quick, something like this, something that basically like speaks personally. Okay. Something that you can read easily. A lot of times people actually skip over quotes. They don't actually you know, um, they actually don't like, so that's why you shouldn't like waste all your time like basically putting all your information in a quote. And actually also it's kind of like what I would call stenography. If you ever call maybe like any kind of like show that involves a court or something like that, or if maybe you've covered courts or been in a court, there's a stenographer and they write down everything that's ever been said. Okay, so that's one of the things you're going to see in your papers is don't be a stenographer, be a reporter, be a writer. Take the stuff that's said to you and write it because you're supposed to be the professional writer. And a lot of times when people talk, they don't necessarily talk in like the clearest way. So it's your job to actually like in paraphrase like this. This is a paraphrase, okay? Because you're not actually directly quoting somebody, you're basically interpreting what they say, okay? So what you're doing is basically like you're paraphrasing what they say, and and you're interpreting what they say in a way that the reader can understand. Okay, so you want to be more of a writer than a stenographer. Okay, and then it basically follows that same pattern, and maybe the next transition would be, you know, why did he do the book? Okay, we did pick why did he do the name, why did he do the book, and maybe we have an anecdote that can speak to that. Okay, maybe a personal anecdote, blah blah blah, that could like, going maybe again going back to childhood, going back to college. I went to Rutgers. Some of the stuff I dealt with in the book deals with some of the stuff I went through at Rutgers. Okay, and then again a quote, and then it's almost like kind of repeats itself. Okay, this is what you see like more in your in-depth stories, more of your feature-ish stories. I mean, right now we actually are going to do a feature assignment, but we're not necessarily going to, right now we're just doing actually straight reporting. Your next assignment, your third assignment I'll be expecting to see more of this. Actually, a lead, a transition, an anecdote, and a quote, and then basically repeat. It goes to your next point, transition, anecdote, quote, okay? And then basically whenever we, probably our next lecture video, I'll show you how, when I actually pick the, when I actually pick the assignment, I'll show you how basically that can be structured, okay? Yeah, rinse, repeat, and it just kind of follows the same pattern. Maybe sometimes you might actually have like two anecdotes in a row. This structure can vary a bit. There's no question about that, okay? So yeah, that's basically what I'm looking for in terms of like how a story should be structured, okay? Um, okay. So let's go to actually chapters 7, 9, and 10 now, okay? And actually, like this is actually like kind of backtracks a little bit. So, let me just actually speak a little bit here. Okay. No, not that. So we're gonna again, the reading I just want to let you know is, again, it's supposed to actually really kind of supplement what I say. So I want you to really like try to keep up with that as much as possible. I give you a week to do it each time. So hopefully, I mean, it's usually like 3 or 4 chapters at a time. I know it's a lot, but I really wanted you to, I can actually again tell when people aren't really reading. I know I don't test on it, but I really can almost tell because it's evident that maybe you haven't either both, because if you haven't been following the lectures, you haven't been doing the reading, and it shows. Okay. So let's just keep that in mind. Okay. Now in the reading, I'm actually going to kind of go back a little bit because chapter 7 actually deals a bit with like what your newest assignment, and that is basically writing the leads and trying to keep them as clear and as efficient and as straightforward as possible. Let's go to the chapters. Okay. We have again chapter 7, basic news leads. And one of the things they talk about is like really just trying to make sure that you identify the central point of the story. I know they give you this tree here, basically maybe as like a way of like actually like, well, it's actually a good idea to maybe even like kind of like list like all the different things that you find out in your story, and then maybe like within that list you can figure out like essentially what is like the most important, interesting, unique thing. Okay. I like to say that actually like, and I'll show you this actually, there's actually one particular lead in that worksheets where where it basically like a lot of the things that are brought up in the reporting are actually relatively common, but there's actually one thing within this particular lead or information for the lead that is actually like separates it from everything else because it makes it the most uncommon. It's like probably the most uncommon thing that's ever happened in this particular incident. I'll actually give you a big hint. It was the attempted murder one. Okay. You look for maybe like the most unusual motive that you can find. Okay. All right. So, I mean, it talks about some of the digital stuff here, which is actually not, summary news lead is basically just like a general lead. And, you want to like try to find like, basically like they answer like, I mean, some of the simplest questions. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is nearing a deal to buy one of the country's biggest power transmissions companies, which would cement electricity. It's a really long lead. That's a Wall Street Journal lead, which is really long. Maryland regulators have allowed the state's first medical marijuana dispensary to open its doors immediately. Again, like very straightforward. Subject, it's active voice. It's subject verb, noun verb, one to the next. Okay. So that's what you really want to how you do your leads. Here's a big one I talked about, and I mean, I actually haven't seen any like as I'm taping this, I haven't actually seen any of your work yet, but I commonly when I've done this assignment in the past, I see this. I see the headline and not the lead. Okay. See, the headline again, as I talked about last week, is usually like it's usually like in present tense. It's like missing like so much information. It's just really meant to grab the reader's attention. Okay. What you're supposed to do is you're actually supposed to write a full sentence here. It says Microsoft has started cutting thousands of positions, mostly in its sales department, days after announcing it would shift its strategy. See, it basically has it's written in past tense. It has the information that gives it an angle that goes beyond just layoffs. It gives you more of it's supposed to give you more information to entice you to read more. Okay. Like the headline is actually supposed to be just kind of like almost like more like the tweet, but then actually the lead is supposed to actually get you to like dig deeper. Now, most people don't read past the lead. That's actually just a fact of news reading life. But that's but you want to have something as enticing as possible, so maybe people will read beyond the lead. Okay. Strong active verbs. I mean, you don't want to like go over the top, but after rushing, that's a strong word. Her daughter to safety, she raced back to the docks and pounded, instead of just saying she walked back or ran back, maybe say she raced back. Okay. You want to like have as enticing as possible, much like you would do if you were trying to tell the story to somebody else. You would try to tell it in a way that actually is like, is like it kind of grabs their attention. Okay. You stress the unusual, the unique. If it's something that's happened like regionally, like obviously, like there's certain things that matter more to other people. If there's something like we did this in Patch, we were all very much a local first organization. So obviously, if there was like a car crash or something like that, it's going to matter much more if it's like, um, if it happens like locally than it happens like maybe like 3 towns over or something like that. Okay, so that's actually like always an important thing. Attribute opinions. I meant to say like, um, why do we attribute and when do we attribute? Okay. So here's the deal. Okay. We attribute to a source, okay, when it's an opinion or a little known fact or not well known fact. Okay. So obviously, like something like I know some people would disagree with this, right? Joe Biden as president is a well known fact. Okay. Or it's just a fact, or like somebody is mayor of a town. It's locally known as a well known fact. It's just indisputable a fact. Okay, so you obviously don't need attribution for that. Okay, but when you add opinion to that, then it needs attribution. Okay, because that's basically a way of footing and saying that it didn't come from you; it came from whatever source you're using or whatever. Okay. Or a little known fact is running for president because he believes he's the only one who can do the job. I mean, that's maybe a little known fact that maybe he feels that way. Okay. So that means that would also need attribution. Okay. But you know, Bradley Cooper is an actor. That's indisputable. That's a fact. So that doesn't need attribution. Okay. But Bradley Cooper is a good actor. That's maybe disputable. I wouldn't, maybe not, but so that would that would need attribution. Still, it's an opinion. Okay. All right. So that's basically, like I said, usually I would say like maybe like one paragraph per like once per paragraph you would have the attribution. You want to avoid like cliches, stating the obvious. Okay. Let me just check on my dog here. This is great for like a tape, right? All right, what do you got? He's got a, oh my God, he's got a, okay, what do you got there? Okay, put that down. Jeez. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, you want to avoid like going over the top. I felt like some of you'll notice that in your stories. I felt like you kind of like Like you would like write things like he just did something that like changed society or something like that. Well, how do we know that? That's an opinion, okay? Um, you don't want to like go over the top. Okay, hold on. I'm actually by myself right now, so I'm kind of you want to like basically keep the story as true and as level as possible, okay? So, all right. So, um again, keeping things if you're going to state something in a story, you want to like make it something that's basically indisputable or something like that, unless it's something that comes from somebody else. It's an opinion. So then you want it, then you would attribute it to a story, you attribute it to somebody. Okay. If somebody like makes the claim that whatever discovery they made or something like that is like, rare and unique, that sort of thing, then attribute it to them. Okay. Because you're not in the room, you don't know that like it is, you have to take that person's word for it. Okay. So all right. Audience is what you have to remind yourself of. That's very important. Your audience again is like a fourth graded on up. So you want to like basically like make sure that it's not like written in like some sort of scientific deep language that like they can't understand. You want to like write it in a way that's very simple and straightforward, but also again has attribution and that gives it credibility. Okay. All right, so let's go to chapter 9, the body of a news story. Okay. Um, all right, so this is actually the chapter inverted pyramid style that actually shows you the inverted pyramid. Okay, so basically what it does is it actually shows you that it actually is like an upside down triangle. Okay, um, and what this upside down triangle shows is that the fat part of the triangle is where the most important stuff is, and that's where the lead is. The lead is the most important part of the story. And yes, it does actually summarizes the story, but it does it in a very simple way. Okay. And this actually is written in a way like the crime way I just showed you guys before. Maybe one of the first things you ask yourself, what is some of the first things people want to know in like a crash story? Usually one of the, if it's obviously the death or something like that, you want to know. You might know the person, okay? And you want to know like how old the person was. Like you have to like almost like put yourself in the reader's shoes and try to think about like what is actually like matters to them most. Okay. So identifies the injury. That's a really important part. And maybe it's something again, I made a correction there before. I was thinking, oh yeah, right. Why and how that's actually usually how people want to know like how this happened. Because it's always like, oh my God, like how could this happen? It's actually one of the first questions people ask. Okay. There's no science to this or something like that. It's just really about emotion and what people are looking for and that sort of thing. Um, charges, actually, that's another one. Actually, I left out before. They want to know if actually anybody's gonna be punished, that sort of thing. I would, and then like basically like maybe like additional information about the accident, goes lower. Damage to the cars, traffic. That's always a big question. I mean, you don't want to be insensitive because people always want to know like if somebody was hurt. I mean, it's just the natural, despite you hear people criticize people for the way they are rubbernecking and all that on the highway, but one of the things they really want to know is the person hurt? People do have compassion. If a hurricane happens in New Orleans and you live in New Jersey, you want to know how many people are hurt, right? You may not have any relatives or anything like that happens down there or down there, but you want to know, like, okay, how many people were hurt? That's just the way it is. Okay. And that's actually one of the first driving questions you should always look for in a story. Okay. Um, so that's, I mean, again, like sometimes the inverted pyramid could be like a little bit of like, I think, an oversimplification of how a story could be written because a lot of times the facts are almost equally important throughout the story. Okay. All right. Um, as we go through, I mean, a lot of the stuff I've talked about background too much too soon. I know you want to like, there's always the compulsion to actually feel like you got to like get like let people know everything that happened with this story and the history of it, especially like with a reaction story. But actually, if you're doing like a story that's reacting to something that's happened, well, that's something that's happened has happened already. So that's old news. Okay. So you want to like push that down is in the story's background, or maybe you mentioned it early on in the story, but you'll allude to it. You don't make it the main point of the story, okay? Especially if it's something that happened like years ago or something like that, okay? Okay. The ending of the story, I mean, I don't know. I don't really totally agree with everything here. I mean, God, to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't even have a book if I did this class on my own. But ending a story, usually like you just end the story. This says talk about having a kicker, but usually just end the story. I like to say that actually probably the best way to end a story is usually like with an anecdote and a quote, okay? Or just like a quote or something. They call it a walk-off quote because it's the least important part of the story. And I saw that a number of you had conclusions in your stories, and there's no conclusions in the news story. Again, your lead is your conclusion. Okay, it's an upside down story, so you conclude whatever you need to conclude in the story in the lead. Okay, so that's why you don't have a conclusion. And also, like most people don't get to the bottom of the story, so you know if you have some important point to make in a conclusion, they're not going to get there. Okay, so that's what you want to like just end the story. Just a story just typically just kind of dwindles out, and that's it, and it's done. Okay, all right. Again, a lot of this is supportive of what I talk about, but it's not necessarily like new because a lot of it I've talked about already. Okay. And I've talked about transitions and how they basically help guide the reader through the story. Okay. Um, examples of essentially that would be like, like the anecdotes, the examples basically to help back up the transitions and the leads that are made in the story. Okay. Need to be fair. Obviously, trying to be as objective as possible is important. Okay. Okay. And then chapter 10, quotations and attributions. Okay, so this is basically again like kind of going to what I was talking about before. I was saying I was going to talk a little bit about this, making sure that you have now one thing again like using direct quotations. Usually, like when you have these really long direct quotations, are really unreadable. Okay, you really like should try to keep them maybe like to a sentence or usually like a kind of a shortish sentence. Okay, because again, the idea here is that like a lot of times when people talk, especially like in a direct quote, it's not always like the easiest thing to read. So like when they talk directly, so you have to actually almost like, yes, clean up their language and make it readable. So you really want to try to keep your direct quotes as minimal as possible. Okay. You really want to like paraphrase. Okay. Or you can even use like partial quotes. See, they like as they give you an example of like the way people might talk, it's always kind of like in this kind of like emotional, they stop, they start, that sort of thing. What you want to do is you want to basically just keep it simple, okay? And the paraphrasing that comes with transitions and anecdotes helps set up and explain these quotations that you make, okay? You want to use your own writing to again really kind of dominate the story, okay? I mean, this kind of you want to avoid maybe like defamatory language, profanities. I mean, that really all kind of depends on profanities on like what publication you have. Like Rolling Stone allows profanities. Um, other in the New York Times apparently I don't think does not. So you really want to be careful with that. I've talked about again like the how many times he actually would like attribute in a story. Okay, and then that's that with that. Okay. All right, so that's what's new. So that's the information you have. More information about like how to actually write a story, that sort of thing. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. If you're confused about anything, again, I can schedule office hours, that sort of thing. All right, thanks very much, guys, and I will be talking to you.